Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Safari Live, and a great start in the beautiful green clearings above camp. We've got some warthog feeding and a few wildebeest enjoying the shade. My name is Byron, and on camera with me this afternoon is Viam. And of course, we've got Ali and Senzo on the vehicle, and Tristan and Ferg will be in the tent this afternoon. Very warm welcome to Thoroughgood Elementary. Great to have the schools with us as always for a school drive. Now don't forget, everyone, send us your questions. Ask your teachers to tweet us via Twitter. Hashtag Safari Live is how you do it. Send us your questions, and for everybody else that is watching, I'm sure you can also send your questions in while we have the school with us. As I said, it's a lovely start, and it is great to be back. I've been away for a while, but wonderful to see these warthogs. And look at those little piglets. That's the female on the right, the larger one, and the two little piglets enjoying this green grass. At the moment, you can see, watch those piglets. I'm wondering if the mother will do it too. See how they go down on their knees. It's a great way to get a little bit lower to enjoy that green grass, and often the grass shoots that they feed on. The warthogs love that. And it's, as I was saying, now it's summer, very, very warm, and we've had a lot of rain, so the bush is green and lush. And I think Thoroughgood Elementary, I don't think you've watched with us before, so it might be a first time for some of you. So it's summer down here in South Africa, and we've had a lot of rain, and the bush is green, and you can see the wildebeest over there also enjoying the shade and some of the green grass shoots. These open clearings are perfect for these animals at the moment. There's a lot of green vegetation, good feeding for these animals. A nice warm afternoon, and great to see them enjoying the warmth and the green vegetation. I might sit here a little bit longer. I think let's head across now to Ali, who is also out in a vehicle, and see what her plan is for the afternoon.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a very, very hot afternoon today in the bush. My name is Ali, and on camera with me today is Senzo, and we are very happy to be taking you on about this bumble today. Now, if you've got any comments or any questions, make sure that you send them through via your teacher using Skype, because we love hearing from you. So a very warm welcome to all of you in the Thoroughgood Elementary. Now, as I mentioned earlier, a little bit earlier, it is very hot today. It is, however, also our summer season. Now, it seems like I have found a very interesting thing that is actually made out of poop. So I'm just gonna show it to you guys really quickly. Now, I would like to be able to handle this. Now, this is very old, but this is such an interesting thing to find. You see this ball over here? Now, I don't know if you've ever seen them or heard of them, but there's a tiny little beetle that actually makes bowls of dung, of the poop, really, of animals, big animals, like, for example, the buffalo or the elephant. So they make them into a bowl like this, and then they lay one egg inside of this bowl. So this is very, very much dried up, and now you see there's a little bit of mud around it. And when the little one is ready to hatch, you see it comes through via this opening over here. So it's actually very interesting to find out that this house that belongs to one of the beetles, I'm not too sure where the beetle is, but that it was actually made by a tiny little thing. A little egg was in there, it ate all of the poop inside, and then poof, came out, carried on with its life. Now, it's amazing to see this because we don't get to see them all that often, especially because they are buried. So they're underneath the ground. Now, I'm going to hold on to this. Hopefully, we'll be able to find a dung beetle so that I can show them to you a little bit later. I'm just going to put this here later because perhaps we'll be able to show it in the tent at some point. Now, not all of the animals eat poop. Most of them don't. But when you find cool little things like that, it's always very interesting to stop and have a look. Yes, I can plug in because I unplugged my mic, which I seem to always forget to replug. Whoopsie, sorry. Yeah, it is my favorite trick. Michelle, you're saying that you've never seen a dung beetle before. Well, they're very funny little creatures, and perhaps my other friend that is now in the tent, that's got access to potentially a computer, might be able to show you a photo of one of them, because they are very, very interesting little things, and they're one of my favorite things out in the bush. Very strange. Whew. Now, just in terms of plans for bigger things, there was a leopard that was seen this morning, and leopards are the most elusive animal that we have in this area. If they don't want to be found, it's very hard to find them, but I'm gonna head on to the area where we last saw him this morning, see if perhaps I get lucky and we can show you guys the leopard. Whew. At least there's a bit of a cloud now, just to be able to help with the temperature, because I feel like it's starting to turn into a puddle. Alright, also as we drive down the road, I'm just gonna keep switching my head back and forth if I see anything. So if anyone does see anything, which has happened before, funny enough, just please make sure that your teacher types it straight away. Like, lion, leopard! It would be fantastic if that happened. I don't think that's ever happened before on a school drive, but why not? We've got to keep the door open for possibilities. I've just heard from Nancy that you're saying that Google's doodle, I don't know if I can call it doodle today, or the sketch image today was a dung beetle rolling a ball. How's that for perfect timing? No, I had absolutely no idea. And funny enough, I have been into Google before, but today, but every time that I've done it, I've just been so worried or so quickly looking for something that I'm like, I'll later. So how's that? That is a perfect coincidence. That, I love it when that happens.
Oh dear, it sounds like we might have had a little issue with Tristan in the tent, but I'm sure he'll be back with us shortly. Myself and VM are still sitting in the clearing watching these animals feeding. Now just have a look here. What I've found fascinating is we've got a few different species of animals. Now look, the warthogs, look at those piglets. They've walked right up to the wildebeest. And that adult wildebeest, they're almost like they're having a little stare off. That could be funny. Look at that. That's wonderful. And interesting. Those little piglets obviously just getting a bit curious, but enjoying the shade. Maybe they wanted to share the shade with the wildebeest. Now, Richard, you asked if the warthogs have two sets of tusks. They do, Richard. If you have a look, let's see if we can see on this adult female. You notice the really large tusks on the upper lip, and then if you look while she's chewing, the bottom jaw, there are two little tusks just below them that overlap slightly with the top tusks. So they have got two sets. The lower jaw, the tusks are very, very small. They just protrude slightly from that lower jaw, and then the big tusks on the upper part of the jaw, the snout, and the front of the snout. Amazing to see how these herbivores, and they're known as grazers. The grazers are the animals that just feed on grass. And there's an impala too. Wonderful to see different species together. But this is a great area for them. It's nice and open. There's a lot of vegetation. So it's perfect for them. Aidan and Will, you were asking about a dominant animal in the food chain. If there's only one dominant animal at the top of the food chain. Well, Aidan and Will, in this area, I would say the dominant predator, or the one at the top of the food chain, would be the lion. So in this area, yes. But in other areas, you might have other predators that are quite high up on the food chain, like crocodiles perhaps. But generally speaking, with predators, the lion is the top of the food chain. They would be able to hunt just about any other animal in this area, especially the herbivores. I've seen lions hunting elephant, animals as large as elephant and rhino. So they definitely are on the top of the food chain. But I've also seen elephants chase lions away. So then you sometimes wonder, well, who is actually the king of the jungle if the elephants are and not actually the lions? But in terms of predators, yes, lion would definitely be the top of the food chain. I'm going to hang around here a little bit longer. This is such a beautiful scene. But let's head back to Ali and find out if she's found some more interesting insects to show you.
Well, not insects for the time being. We have found something that, although looks very much like ice cream, it is not. And now that Byron's talking about predators, sorry, I'm very, very thirsty and I cannot see much because of the reflection right in front of us. There is a little something that looks white, and that's what I was saying, that it might look like ice cream, but it is not ice cream, and it is the dung for one of the most dominant predators that we have in this area. Now, I think the lions probably are the strongest ones that we get in this particular spot, but there is another one that, although a little bit smaller, is also very powerful. So I'm sure you've heard of them. These are the hyenas. Now, because the hyenas eat a lot more bone than some of the other animals that we have in this area, because they have a jaw that is a lot stronger, then they eat a lot more bone, and when their dung dries out, then that's when it becomes of that yellow color, that white color. And you will not see the dung of any other creature looking white. So whenever you see the white color over there, that is the dung of the hyenas. But I'm not going to go and touch that one because there might have a lot of bacteria in there. Mrs. Collingsworth, you're wondering how long it takes for the dung beetles to make this beautiful bowl. Well, they actually make quite a few, and it might take them anything from a couple of hours to perhaps half a day. It depends if there are other dung beetles coming and trying to steal the dung from them. So normally what will happen is the first dung beetle will make a ball, and then it will try to use it to get a girl. And as soon as it gets a girl, then you'll see both of them rolling away in their dung. And then once they've eaten that ball of dung, then the male will come back and will make another one and will take it to the female, and then they're going to bury it. And that's where they're going to start laying their eggs. So this is a very cool ball. You can see it's perfect still, which is quite rare. Now, there are some species of animals because... don't fall. Some species of animals like the honey badgers that looks very much like a badger that come and they actually find them and sniff them and unbury them and then break them in half so that they can eat the little larva, which is the baby insect that's in there. I'm sure it must be quite yummy for them. Who knew? Right, seems like Tristan has got some creepy crawlies, so let's go over to him and find out more.
Indeed, I do, Ali. So now that he's actually trying to get away from me, I'm going to put him back in his little tub. As Ali mentioned earlier, my name is Tristan, and I didn't get to say it nicely earlier because my audio wasn't working. And our little beetle is trying to get away from me, and he's not so little. It is a very, very large, giant longhorn beetle. And now the reason why it's called a longhorn beetle is because of these long legs. And I want to try and just set him down because he's kind of all over the place. You can see he's just trying to crawl at the moment. He's been a relaxed beetle the entire day until now. Now, all of a sudden, he's decided to wake up. And I'm a bit careful of these guys because if you see on their front end, they've got these massive jaws that they're able to do all kinds of nonsense with. They're climbing over my mouse onto a giraffe skull. So all of a sudden, this guy has decided to wake up and off he goes. Now, these guys are quite interesting little creatures. They start off life as a little grub where they live inside of wood. And I'm going to try and find you one of those grubs a little bit later because there are some pieces of wood close by that would be able to have the little grub on it. Now, let's try and help him out because we don't want him to be on his back. There we go. No, don't eat me because that's very sore if you pinch me with your little pincers. And then they hatch out of that little piece of wood and then they start to become these adults. And you can see, look how big it is. It's crawling all over me and it's using its long antennas and those big eyes to try and figure out where it needs to go. And normally we find these guys coming out at night. So I actually found this guy this morning and he was in the camp and he was kind of on his back, and so I rescued him, and I knew that we would be out and about this afternoon with you guys, and I thought you would really want to be able to see one of them. Now, other than the fact that he's got very large, big pincers that he's using to keep himself safe, you might also notice if he actually sits still for 2 seconds, sorry Ferg, I'm just trying to get him to sit still, you might actually notice that just behind his rather large antenna or eyes over here, come on, sit still. No, he doesn't want to sit still. He doesn't want to be a friend today. You'll notice that there are some big spikes. Now, those spikes on the exoskeleton are very hard and very, very sharp, and they're going to keep this guy safe from birds and all kinds of other things. But what I want to try and do is see if I can put it under a microscope so we can see what there is in between those big pincers. Whether he's going to stay there or not, I'm not quite sure. Let's see. Will he stay? No, he's not going to. All right, let's put him in the box for now and see if he'll just relax, although he wants to be my friend for now. Now, Don, you want to know what these longhorn beetles eat? Well, when you've got anything that has pincers that large, they tend to be predatory, so they tend to be going after other insects, which they'll use to grab onto. And those pincers will pull the other insect apart. So they'll hunt things like moths and other things that come out at night, maybe even some other longhorn beetles, because you get lots of different type of longhorn beetles, and they'll go after smaller ones. These are the biggest ones we get here. In fact, this is not even the biggest one I've seen. This species, you do get some that are slightly bigger. But he's a very active fella. Like I say, the whole day, he's been sitting in the same place, hasn't moved, and as soon as I wanted to show him to you, he got into this situation where he was nice and busy. But I'm being quite glad because he's not biting me as yet, which is quite nice. And so he's being a little bit more cooperative than I thought he'd be. Oh, Fergie wants to make friends with you. Right, now I'm going to try and see if I can get this guy under a microscope so that I can show you his incredible eyes and his pincers. I don't know if it's going to be possible because he's very, very active. But while I try and do that, let's send you across to my friend Byron, who I think has left his warthogs now, and hopefully he'll be on to something very interesting soon.
We are indeed, Tristan, and it's fascinating that you've got a longhorn beetle. Those are awesome little creatures to see. Now, the warthogs are still hanging around with the wildebeest, enjoying the shade. And they've moved a little bit away from us, but they're still, as I say, in the shade there. And Zorian, you asked if the warthogs are aggressive. Now, let's see if that female, they're just behind the tree there now. A little bit there they are. Zorian, you know what? The warthogs are very tough creatures. I've seen them actually, those that are brave enough, if they do come close to people, I've seen them chase people before. They can be aggressive, I think, if you corner them or you threaten them. Like most animals, if they feel threatened, they will try to protect themselves. And I have seen warthogs chase people, which is funny, but they can do serious damage. Those sharp tusks would really, really hurt, and especially if you walk in front of a warthog burrow, if they get afraid or feel threatened, they'll run out, and those sharp tusks can cause a lot of damage and even break a leg. So you need to be very careful if you are walking in the bush. But generally, they would move away from us. They're more afraid of us than we are of them. But if you did corner them or threaten them, they can be quite aggressive. Isabel and Sirhan, you were asking what predators would go after these warthogs. Well, we were mentioning earlier about the lions being top of the food chain here in terms of predators. So definitely lions as well as leopards. Now, I have seen wild dogs trying to catch warthog, but it's not very easy for the wild dog. Again, with the warthog being so tough, but wild dogs would too. But usually the main predators would be lion and leopard. And I've seen, and I think Noel, actually, one of the other presenters, saw a leopard catch a warthog not so long ago. What they usually do is they'll wait, the leopard will wait above the burrow. And warthogs like to burrow into termite mounds. That's where they make their homes, abandoned termite mounds, and leopards would wait on above on top of the mound, and as the warthogs come running out, the leopard would try and pounce and catch one. It's not easy, but leopards are quite good at catching warthog and very agile and powerful. But these little animals are very fast, so it's not always easy. And they're just moving off over there now. I think we may do the same. That wildebeest still enjoying the shade. It's wonderful to see those little wildebeest calves earlier. There they are. Those youngsters. They would have been born probably around December. It's only a few months old. Already those little horns protruding over there. Chatting about these herbivores and the grazers being together in these areas, and it's a nice green area. It's wonderful for the grazers to be in the open grassland like this. There's good food for them. They can keep an eye out for predators, and they can warn each other if there's any danger. So you often find animals like warthog, wildebeest, zebra, impala all together in the clearings like this. And I think that's why we saw all these species together. I think they've just moved off. I see those warthogs disappearing over the hill. I think we might do the same. I think we might continue. I'd like to try and find the Nkuhumas pride. It's a pride of lions that we see on Djuma. I haven't seen them for a long time, so I'm hoping we get to see them this afternoon. And while I do that, let's head back across to Ellie, find out how our afternoon's going and where she is heading.
Well, so far the afternoon is going great. Welcome to South Africa for everyone that's just joined. My name is Ali, and on camera with me is Senza. And we are very happy to have on board today Thoroughgood School for the very first time. So for the next little while, we will be answering the questions all the way from Virginia, which is quite exciting. Now, all the way back in South Africa, in the greater Kruger Park where we are based, I am busy trying to find a leopard. Although I'm not being that successful. I think probably because it's so hot and the leopard very likely is underneath the bushes hiding. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually saw me walking through. Driving through. Isabel and Sohan, you're wondering how hot do the hottest days get in the summer? Well, I had one day, and I remember this, it was about 2 years ago, where I felt like even my eyes were burning. It was so hot, and you would stand there, and it was horrible. And if I recall correctly, that the temperature degrees Celsius. Now, I have no idea how much that is in Fahrenheit, and every time I try to convert it, I just make up a number that's way, way, way hotter than what it is. But let me tell you this, nobody should live under those conditions. It was very hot, almost like the desert. That's how hot it was. It was horrible. But this particular summer, I must say, it hasn't really been that bad. I think we're up to have the perfect temperature all year round. But just as soon as these hot days are long gone, then in the next following months, from May onwards, and we're going to be very sad because we're going to be wanting a little bit of warmth, because then it's going to be the winter time here and it gets very cold. Natalie, you want to know what the climate is like here? Well, we have, I would like to say the 4 seasons don't really occur here, at least not as you have them in certain places of the world where you would get a specific spring and then a specific autumn. 4 seasons is a pizza, says Rebecca in FC. I agree with you. So mostly we have the summer and the winter. Now, because of the general conditions of South Africa and the fact that it's got a mountain in the top and then we are pretty much sandwiched in between 2 oceans, mostly during the summertime, that is when we get our rain. So in this particular time of the year, from roughly October until April, I'm going to say, this is when it's very, very hot and humid and when it rains. And then from May until around about September, that's when it's our winter and it gets very cold here. It can go down to about 0 degrees, which I want to say it's about 32 Fahrenheit, so it can get very cold. That whole thing about it never being cold never being cold in Africa is a lie, let me tell you, because I suffer and I put on everything I own just to try and keep warm. Now, in this particular area, we don't get snow, but in some other areas we do. Now, it seems like Tristan is still playing around with the longhorn beetle, so let's go back to him and ask him how would the longhorn beetle survive in the wintertime.
Well, our longhorn beetle is still moving around. I tried to get him under the microscope, but he was just not having any of it. He was saying, nope, not to school today. I want to carry on with my life and carry on moving around. Now, he's still very active. And the reason why he's probably more active than what he was this morning is because this morning we had very cold, cloudy weather. And it was a bit rainy kind of weather. And so there wasn't really too much happening. And a lot of the insects, when it's cooler, they slow right down. They don't do well in the cold weather. But you'll find when it gets hot, like it has this afternoon, he's gotten a lot quicker and a lot sort of faster. Now, Tristan, you're wondering, nice name, I like your name, Tristan. You're wondering how big these guys can get. Well, Tristan, these guys, this one that we see here is the biggest species we get here in Africa. And this, well, in this part of Africa, should I say. You probably find there's bigger ones in the jungles of Africa, but this is the biggest one we get here. And this particular one, like I say, is not fully grown. I've seen one that gets about the length of my finger. So if I put my finger next to him, which is quite difficult because he moves so much, but it gets to about the length of my finger, so it could still grow a little bit more. I'm going to just leave him to climb and see where he goes. Hopefully he doesn't nibble on my ear, because that won't be so nice. And hopefully he doesn't go down my shirt, but he's going to go all the way around the back and up onto my cap. Now, Hunter, you want to know if there's a difference between male and female longhorn beetles. Hunter, not that I know of. I haven't actually gone that far into it, but I don't think so. I think they're pretty similar in terms of their look and their shape, and it would be very difficult for us to be able to know. No, don't bite my ear. That's not funny. So no biting of ear, little longhorn beetle. You need to go on top of my head, rather, because that's where it's a lot more comfortable. So he's going to just climb around, and hopefully we're going to get a situation where he's going to stay up there and decide, or she, I don't know if it's a he or a she, and decide just to relax and take it easy. Now, while I was sitting here and... Oh, did you see it just flew? Look at that. It flew off. So it's got wings, and that's how they travel and how they're able to take their larvae everywhere they need to take it in order to be able to go and deposit larvae in trees. I was saying to you earlier that these guys will go and they will lay their eggs on a tree, and the larvae will actually bore into a piece of wood, which I will try and find just now. But there you go. You see those big wings that are starting to come out? So not only are they fast on their legs, but they're also able to fly. Now, hopefully he's going to just settle down. Come on. No need to go so fast. In fact, actually... Tristan, you want to know how big a dung beetle gets? Well, again, it depends on the type of dung beetle that we see. So some dung beetles are very small, and they'll get to the size of maybe your thumb. Tristan, I don't know how old you are, Tristan, but maybe about the size of your thumb, if it is still a little smaller. And then some of them will get to about the size of my thumb in terms of their length, but their width and how wide they are is very, very big as well. Dung beetles are more round than this longhorn beetle. This longhorn beetle is very, very long and narrow, but dung beetles tend to get round like this. So the biggest ones would be about that size, and they are very, very strong. If you try and put a dung beetle into your hand like this and you close it, the dung beetle has a very clever system where it's got a head that is shaped like a spade. And so what it does is it uses its head and it digs like this, and it tries to dig between your fingers, and then it's got these really strong legs that push, and it eventually will dig its way through, and then it will come out. So they're really amazing animals, but those are the very big ones. We'll get to about that size. Most of the ones we see here are around that size, and they're very round, like I say, with a little flattened head. I'll try and look for one today. It's going to be quite tough to find them because it's been very dry here. We haven't had that much rain. The dung beetles haven't really been around, but we had a bit of rain 2 days ago, so maybe we're going to start seeing some of the dung beetles moving around in this particular section. Now, let's put my gorilla cup away and my Tupperware. Now, Jan Weston, you want to know how long have longhorn beetles been on the earth? I have absolutely no idea. I will have to try and find out for you, but luckily I'm sitting here in an area where I've got lots of little tools at my disposal. So I've got all of my computers that are here, so I'll check it for you and try and find out if I can get an answer for you. It's going to probably take a little bit of time to work out how long dung beetles have been on this earth for, but I'll try and check it out and see. It's probably a long, long time, millions of years, I would imagine, but we will have a look and see if we can get an exact time. Now, while I try and figure out how long a longhorn beetle has been on the earth, let's send you back across to Byron, who's still looking for the Nkuhuma pride.
I am indeed, Tristan, but we've just actually heard lines, what sounded like fighting, so we're having a look around here. See if we can see them. It's quite thick if you have a look around. The bush is very thick, but VM and I both just heard these lions fighting in here. Let's listen for a second and maybe we can hear them again. I'm not sure where they are. It sounded like a little bit further this way, in this direction, but it is difficult to maneuver through here. So I'm going to try my best. There's a lot of tree stumps. Julie and Reese, you asked if all animals have teeth. Well, most animals do. Julie and Reese, most animals do. Watch out for some branch. I'm trying to think of an animal that doesn't have teeth. A tortoise. A tortoise doesn't have teeth, does it? I don't think so. I don't think a tortoise has got teeth. And I'm trying to think what else. But otherwise, most animals, all the herbivores, put it this way, all the herbivores or antelope species, they all have teeth. All the predators, the carnivores, obviously all have teeth. I'm trying to think what else hasn't got teeth though. Let me just try and maneuver through this area. Maybe Ellie can help us with that question, tell us what else she thinks hasn't got teeth.
Well, that is a very interesting question, and I think the only animal that I can think of that doesn't have teeth when it's little, maybe humans? Humans don't have teeth, do they? We don't when we're born, but now if we're just strictly thinking of animals, then I don't know, I think terrapin was a good one. Birds don't have teeth, they've just got their beak, so I suppose maybe we can include all of them in that category, but not too sure what else. Now, I am looking for something that's got very sharp teeth, but I haven't been able to find not even one clue, not even one, as to where it might have gone. So I'm actually looking onto the side of the road, see if I can find any tracks. Hudson, you're wondering if the leopard will come to me if I'm calm. Well, we try to, there's a lot of superstition around that, you know, maybe if we attract them with our good thinking and we're just think positive thoughts that they're gonna come, but not necessarily no. So we actually need to think or try to think like a leopard. Where would they go at this time of the day? So it's very hot, so I think it will go into the shade and probably look for water, and that type of thing gets us a little bit further into trying to find them. Now, when you do find them, that's when you have to be calm, because a lot of the times we get excited, or sometimes you can even get a fright because it's a big leopard and it's very close to you. So it's very important that once you see any of the big cats, or any animal for that matter, they are very used to the shape of a car and us going around and moving around. So as long as you don't start, you know, waving your arms and going, hey, kitty, 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 then they tend to pretty much ignore us, which is great, because that's exactly what we want. Also, no leopard tracks here. I wonder where this little friend of ours went. Now, this is a leopard that I have never seen before. Well, actually, I sort of saw it, but it was only at night when he was sniffing the gate of our house. But haven't seen him here. Madison, you're wondering how the animals survive in the hot weather. Well, different animals have different strategies, different things that they do. So animals like the leopards, the lions, the antelope, what else, the birds, they mostly go and stay in areas where there's a little bit of shade, so a lot of the times either underneath a bush or underneath a tree, and of course in areas where there's a nice breeze coming to try and keep them cool. Some of their animals are doing it in a bit of a more fun way, like the elephants, the rhinos, the buffaloes, and they go into the water and they play in the water for a little while, or they spray mud on top of themselves, and they don't take that mud off, they just leave it on, because eventually this mud acts almost like a sunscreen, but it also, because there's a lot of mud and it sweats, then it keeps them cool. But I would like very much to be like an elephant now and go into a water hole and just be in there. That would be great. So I'm thinking that this leopard is probably either on top of a tree, just enjoying, or down at the bottom of a tree. Sorry, I was just listening to an update on the radio. So I've got an earpiece on my ear that allows me to listen to what of the other guys are talking all around. So there's a lot of talk going in my head at the moment of things that we could potentially be interested. So I'm going to send you guys across to Tristan and the longhorn beetle.
Well, Ali, lucky that you have a lot of information going through your head, because through my head there seems to be blank spaces this afternoon. I seem to be nowhere, but that's okay. My friend, the giraffe, is also having a similar feeling today. And so, Lane, you want to know if longhorn beetles fight each other. Well, I would imagine if they come too close and they're competing for mating, so if they want to try and find another female or male, then sometimes they might fight with one another. I've never seen them fight. I've seen longhorn beetles together, walking side by side, but I've never seen them actually fighting with one another. But given that they've got big jaws like they have, then I would imagine that they might be able to fight one another and be able to kind of throw each other around. Now, you were asking earlier about how big a longhorn beetle can get, and I've got to be careful because there's lights up here that hit me in the head, and then I'm going to make myself even more stupid than I already am at the moment. But the longest longhorn beetle I was saying to you earlier is about the size of my finger, and so I've actually got one. I forgot completely that we've got one in the tent. It's been a while since I've been inside here, so this is like a classroom of itself. Now, the longhorn beetle is that big brown one in the middle, and next to it is a dung beetle. So you're asking about the dung beetle, so now you can see the sizes of a dung beetle and a longhorn beetle and what the difference is between the two of them. Now, the longhorn beetle that's inside there, that is the biggest of the big that we get here. That's as large as they're going to get, and they are massive, 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 and they can move around. Now, this particular longhorn beetle has, unfortunately, its horns or its antenna, which where it gets its name, have broken off or been eaten by something, and it doesn't have the same big jaws like we see on the longhorn beetle that was climbing on my head. And so that would have been a far friendlier longhorn beetle to have had with me than to have had the one that we did, because that one was nibbling on my ear, and it's not very comfortable when they nibble on your ear. A friend of mine once learned the hard way at how bad a longhorn beetle can be by getting it stuck on his skin, and it nipped him, and it actually drew some blood, so you've got to be a bit careful. Now, you might be wondering why I've got this big skull over here. Now, this big skull is a very good friend of ours. This is a giraffe that lived in this area and was then unfortunately died, and we managed to find its skull. Now, it's lived in the tent for a number of years, and it is a home to some very, very cool little insects. And because we're talking about insects, I want to show you my little friends that live on the giraffe skull. If you look at it like this, you would think this animal is so dead that there can't be anything that any insect would want from it. There's not like an insect can eat the bone. The bone is still very hard. There's no meat left on it for them to eat. And so you would wonder, why would an insect spend any time, and what insect would be on this giraffe? Now, if I turn this giraffe around, so let me pick it up, it's quite heavy, so I'm going to turn it around for you, and I'm going to show you over here, there is a little tube coming out. Now, unfortunately, we had a naughty bull elephant that was around the tent earlier today, and it broke the little tube for our friends that live on the giraffe. This was actually a nice long tube, and these are made by bees, but not the bees that you're normally thinking about. These are called stingless bees or mapani bees. Now, the reason why they're called stingless bees is because they do not have the same stinger as maybe an African bee or even the normal bees that you see at home. They have a very short stinger, and it can't be used to sting us. So I can put my hand here and I don't have to worry what's going on. But can you see them crawling around there? They're trying to rebuild their little tube because unfortunately somebody broke it. But if I touch the tube, it's very sticky. It's like honey. And you see, look how it's sticking to my finger. You see, it sticks like that. So they're going to try and rebuild it. That's what they're using to rebuild their little tube. But what I want to show you is I want to show you these little guys under the microscope. So I'm going to try and just turn it a little bit further so that I can actually see what I'm doing. So I'm going to put it right there. Now I need to get my microscope out, which is over here. So let's get my microscope quickly, and now I need to just try and find a way to view these guys without hurting or damaging them in any way whatsoever. So I'm going to just try and focus it for you. There we go. So there we go. Now you can see the microscope, and look, you see the little bees? They're moving about. So lots of bees in and out, and each one you see has got something in its pincers, in its mouth. So they've got little bits of wax that they are bringing up, and they are sticking it to the sides because they are now trying to repair and mend what the elephant did to the skull, because the elephant kicked the skull and broke the little tube, and so they're mixing their wax together, and they are then rebuilding the tube for protection. Now, the reason why these stingless bees live here is because it's a safe place for them to live. They can have a nice big skull that nobody can get to them. It's very safe from other predators, and they can live inside there. And then they come out and they fly around to go look for food. So, Madison, you're wondering how long do giraffe skulls and bones preserve themselves for? Well, Madison, that depends on a lot of things. It depends on how the bones fall, what the temperatures are around there. Is there any floods in those areas that potentially washes a lot of sediment over them? Because they can eventually be fossilized, which means you can get bones that are millions of years old. Like we know with dinosaurs, they have a lot of bones and a lot of, well, we have a lot of bones from dinosaurs that are fossilized. So you can get bones that last for a long time. But if they are not fossilized, so if they do not go underneath any soil or anything like that, you'll find that a giraffe skull like this left out in the sun will slowly but surely start to disintegrate. And what that means is it will slowly break up. Now, if you have a look at this giraffe, I want you to look over here. You can see that there is little pieces that are kind of just flaking off. And the reason why these pieces are flaking off, these little bits of bone are coming off, is because what's happening with this is as the sun is hitting it, the sun is bleaching it and destroying this sort of outer layer. There's also going to be rain and well as cold and warm temperatures. And so what happens with cold and warm? Cold means that this whole skull will actually shrivel a little bit, and warm, it will heat up and expand slightly because there's still an element of moisture inside there. And as that happens, it causes a bit of weathering, and it causes the bone to crack and start to disintegrate. Also, you will have things like hyenas out here, and they will basically break off bits when it rains, it smells a bit, and you can actually see in this front section over here, this is where hyenas actually fed off it. So they broke this front nose section and they ate the nose of this, or lions, if it was lions that killed it. And so over time, hyenas would have broken this up. Luckily, we found it before the hyenas did. Now, sorry, Rebecca, if you can just repeat the name for me. I got the question, but I didn't hear the name. Maria and Frezi, I think it was. You want to know, why do giraffes have blue tongues? Well, the reason for it is because giraffes, unlike us, do not have many blood vessels very close to the surface of their tongue. Our tongues are very pink, like that. And the reason why is because lots of blood vessels very close with lots of sensory cells so that we can taste all the different types of food. Giraffe don't really need to taste the complex flavors like we do in our food. And so what they've got is they've got this long tongue that is able to go out and to feed off plants with very sharp thorns, particularly a plant called an acacia, which I'll go out and find just now for you as well. Those acacia plants will have sharp thorns, and that means that when a giraffe wraps its tongue around it, it's got to be very careful. If it had a tongue like ours, it's just going to get cut and there's going to be blood everywhere and it's not going to be able to feed. So what they've got is they've got a whole bunch of bumps that are basically lining the tongue. None of those bumps have blood vessels or nerve endings in them, and so those bumps don't hurt if they get stabbed by a thorn, and they don't bleed. And so it means that because they don't have those kind of blood vessels, it means there's no pinkness to the tongue, and that's why it's that blue-black color rather than a pink color. Right. Now, I'm going to go and try and see if I can find you one of those acacia trees and a piece of wood to show you where baby longhorn beetles are. And while I do that, I'm going to send you across to Byron, who's being a bit of a detective and is looking at some tracks in the sand.
Well, I am trying to, Tristan. Now have a look at those beautiful tracks in the sand. Those are lion tracks. I'd like to get out and show them to you properly, but I can't because they are the lions. It's the lions that we heard, and we've managed to find them. Now, some of you often ask us, how do we find these animals? What are we looking for? Well, the main thing is, of course, the tracks that we can sometimes see in the sand. They leave their tracks behind, the prints. And these are very fresh tracks because they're on top of the vehicle tracks that drove through this area this morning. And then, of course, we also heard the lions calling earlier. They were growling at one another. And that alerted us into which area they might be. We drove through the bush for a while and then came across the fresh tracks and followed them down and found the lions. Blake and Nico, is it Nico or Miko? Sorry, I didn't hear that properly. You were asking how old lions can get. and Blake and Nico. The lions, on average, lionesses, the females can get to about 15 or 17 years old, between 15 and 17 years old, and the males, on average, it's between 10 and 12 years old. So not as long as the females, but it does depend. Occasionally, a pride might do very well. They will be very successful, have a lot of good hunters within the pride, and the lions might live a little bit longer. But that's the average age for males and females. Now, I'm so happy to see this pride again, and they're looking very good, very healthy. I haven't seen them for quite a long time. I've been away, so it's great to see them. There are two males. I'm going to try to show you the two males. Maybe they're lying in the long grass at the moment. Kylie, you were asking about the male lions, and if all male lions have got those big manes, that beautiful hair around the head and the neck. And Kylie, you know what, to be honest, not really, not always. There is an area in Africa that is well known for male lions that do not have manes. It's known as Tsavo. There was actually a film made about Tsavo and the maneless lions that occurred in the area. And I think one of the main reasons for that is possibly the vegetation, the heat, and maybe genetics. Sometimes genetics often determines whether the lions have got that big head of hair. Sometimes they might not. I think it's got to do with all of that area, vegetation, heat, genetics, and sometimes they don't. But most of the lions that I've seen, all the males, the big males, have got the big manes, and especially the lions we have in this area. Isn't it, Maddie, you were asking, why do lions fight? Now, earlier, that sound that we heard, they were growling, and both Viam and I heard it immediately. I think what possibly happened is maybe one of the males lay down in the shade, and one of these young lions went a little too close, possibly tried to lie on top of him or close to him, which lions often do. They're very social animals, and maybe that triggered the male to get a bit aggressive. And I think that's what happened. I think that's why they had a little bit of a scuffle, but they seem to have settled down now, and they're enjoying the shade. It is still warm, so I don't think they're going to move anytime soon. And Kayla, that's I think leading into your question about how long they rest for. So Kayla, it depends. Lions, Taylor, not Kayla. So Taylor, some lions, when it's very, very hot, if they've eaten, they can rest up to 20 hours a day. If they've had a good meal and close to water, they don't necessarily have to move. And when it's very, very hot, so that can be up to 20 hours a day, but I suppose it depends again on the area, the amount of food and water available. And I think, unfortunately, that's all we have time for our school. It's wonderful. It was wonderful to have the kids from Thoroughgood Elementary. I hope you all enjoyed Safari Live with us this afternoon, and we hope to see you very soon. Thank you for your questions. So from us at Safari Live to Thoroughgood, goodbye, and we'll see you soon. All the other viewers that are still with us, hello again, and I'm sure you've been watching and we've just found these lions. Don't forget, send us your questions, please. Hashtag Safari Live via Twitter or on the YouTube stream in the comment section. You can comment there and we'll get to as many of your questions as we possibly can. And it's great to be back, everyone, and thank you very much. I know there have been a lot of messages coming in welcoming me back, and it's wonderful to be back. And what a nice start. Find some lions. It is very, very hot, but nonetheless, it's always great to see the lions, especially this pride. Haven't seen them for a while. I'm just going to try and move forward slightly because I think there might be a nice view of the male. Alright, let me just, while I reposition, let's head back across to Ali, who's apparently doing some off-roading of her own.
Well, I am off-roading, and hello everyone, but so there was a report of Thandi and the cub being sighted late this morning by one of the Buffelshoek landowners. So they mentioned that they had left Thandi and the cub in this particular area where I'm in now, and apparently the cub was left on a termite mound and then she carried on going. Now, I couldn't see any tracks of Thandi coming in and out of this block on the ways that I've been traveling. So I would imagine that she's still in here somewhere, which is good news because then we know that the cub is still around and so is Thandi. But I cannot seem to find her, and I'm not 100% sure if she's still here. She might have moved during the day. So I'm just doing a little bit of a recognition, see if we can find her. I'm going to carry on trying to find Thandi. If not, then I'll go back onto the road. But while I bundubash and focus what I'm doing, let's go to Tristan, who's got an aerial view of the world.
I do indeed. So Fergus and I are just surveying the landscape. You can see there's quarantine clearings, and just to the sort of left of the picture is where Djuma camp is, and to the right is where Ingas is. So for those of you who don't know where Ingas is, that's the right. That's where Ferg, myself, Jared, Ashley and Ali stay. And then there is the main camp in the middle with one of our repeaters that allows us to broadcast to you. And then Fergus panning around, and there on the left side now is the Djuma camp. So wave, Rebecca, you're on camera. You don't even know it, but you are. And there is the tent hidden in the beautiful greenery of Djuma Game Reserve. It looks vastly different to a few weeks ago. I remember Seb doing some drone. And Alicia as well. I'm sorry, Alicia, you are also an FCI. I do apologize. I'm very sorry. So you must also wave, Alicia, because everyone wants to see you. Now, I was saying that earlier that Seb was droning and having some views of lions a few weeks ago. And it wasn't actually that long ago. It was just before we started on our TV sort of series. And the landscape looked very different to what we see now. It was brown. It was desolate. Whereas now, after the little bit of rain that we've had and those beautiful puffy clouds, which hopefully will be more rain on the way, you can see that there's this green flush that has now happened. And the pathways between all the roads are slowly but surely starting to close up a little bit. They're not quite the same sort of thickness and visibility as what they were a few weeks ago. Now, I see that there's a little bit of breakup as well in the picture, so I do apologize about that. But Ferg is just trying to find us to see if there's any of these bull elephants that have been hanging around. I don't know where Daryl went. He was causing havoc this morning. In fact, he broke a window this morning, did Daryl. So, Taylor, when you get back, you have got some discipline work to do with Daryl. You need to let him know that he cannot be coming and breaking windows. Apparently, he was feeding on marulas, and he turned and his trunk hit one of the windows and just smashed the whole pane out of its frame. So poor Kirsty had glass all over her bed. Luckily, she was directing at the time, and that means she didn't have to worry about what was going on. But there goes Ferg, just drifting over towards Gallagher's shortcut side. So that's Gallagher's shortcut that's going off to the right, and off to the left is Zoe's on the top of the screen. So just to orientate yourself so you know where you are. Very, very cool to see. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and see if we can find maybe something with the drone at some point. We're also going to scrounge around on and around the tent and try not to break anything so that James doesn't kill me. And while we do that, let's send you back over to Byron with the beautiful Nkuhumas Pride.
Thanks, Tristan. Good luck with the drone. A lot has changed since I've been away, and I understand that Ferg is now qualified to drone pilot, which is great. So that's quite exciting and something fun for Fergs and Tristan to do. We're still sitting with the Pride, and you can see the male at the moment. Just repositioned there. He is one of them. The other one is here too, one of the other Birmingham males. I believe it was them and it looks like them, but the one is lying at the back and this one's lying in the shade. So my theory earlier when we heard these lions was maybe a youngster, one of the sub-adults got a little bit too close to the male, and they possibly had an altercation. And I think that's what happened, because those three are quite close to each other in the shade there. So maybe That was what happened, but they've all settled down now. And I think they may remain here for a while. It is still very, very hot. There is a bit of cloud cover building. It looks like possibly storm clouds building that are maybe going to head our way later. But for the moment, it's still hot and they're going to rest in the shade. Now, Caesar, you were asking what variables affect the color of the lion's mane. Caesar, in my experience and what I've seen, the theory is two variables. The one is area, location, where they are found, and it's not necessarily just lions. I've heard it also affect different animals like birds, certain coloration in birds, and that making it prominent in certain areas and less prominent in other areas. So the further west we go to the west coast of Africa and South Africa, some animals tend to be a bit darker in coloration, or some birds tend to be lighter, as opposed to this eastern part of South Africa. So there is, I think, geographical influence that affects color. But then also with a lot of lions, I've read up that testosterone and genetics obviously affects the coloration of the mane. Now, I was in an area recently in the Kalahari, in the eastern part of South Africa, and the southern part of the Kalahari. And there they've got male lions that are known for having these beautiful dark manes, very, very black manes. And I think that is genetic, the Kalahari black-maned lions, as they are known. So I do think a lot of it is genetic and depends on the area where they've grown up. A lot of the lions we see here, there are some that have got a bit of black in the mane, but not as much as I've seen in those areas. Keisha, you asked about, you were saying your hair lightens in the sun. Why doesn't that happen with the lions and especially the manes? I'm not too sure. I think with the darker the hair, I don't think it lightens. I'm just trying to think. I've got very dark hair, and I don't think my hair lightens in the sun. Not that I've noticed anyway. And I think similar with lions, the black manes, that testosterone and the genetics giving them those black manes. I have never seen the sun lighten the manes. If I think of the Kalahari and the harsh conditions there, they are exposed to the light a lot. I've never seen any of those manes lighten with color. So I'm not sure with the hair lightening. I think someone else, maybe Ellie, can help us with the hair lightening. I wonder if her hair lightens in the sun, and she's still driving around. Let's find out how the afternoon's going.
Well, my hair does lighten in the sun, Byron, so I got nothing. Normally, after working at Safari Live for a few weeks, I can already see the strands of hair that are exposed by the cap becoming lighter in color. Now, I haven't been able to find Thandi, and I think the reason being So there's been a bit of pressure in this area this morning, and by that I mean that the Hukumuri male was left where Tristan left him this morning. It wasn't too far away from where they last spotted her. So I wonder if she actually hasn't moved away, sensing or smelling the Hukumuri male in this area. So there's another road that I want to try and check just in case she's carried on coming in this direction and she's crossed here. And now I also know that there are some other people on Torchwood side that are checking all the roads there just to be able to see if perhaps she's around here or him. So we're going to carry on checking. Hopefully we'll be able to find some of them at any point. Now there are some tracks, but they appear to be old tracks. So, and that is okay. I But if you've got any questions or any comments about how we track or what the animals that we're looking at are doing, feel free to send them through using the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or using the comment section on the YouTube chat. This is, as Brett Leo Smith would say, 100% live and interactive. So whatever it is that you are seeing, it's exactly what we are doing and seeing too. Which is quite unimaginable. I'd imagine being a kid and just a few years ago and just having this opportunity, I reckon I would have been glued to Safari Live. Because the soap operas that happen over here are very unique. Now, I need to also focus a little bit on the road, but I cannot see anything here that might indicate that there was a leopard. Which is a little bit unfortunate because I would really like to see Thandi and her cousin just to make sure that they're fine. Now, nothing around here. Almost also tough because now we also have to check on top of the trees and the vegetation is so thick, which is a really good thing for the following months where we're not going to have as much food available for the herbivores. However, it makes it a little bit trickier at this time of the year for us to find things. So I'm just relying on the tracks really. Because if she carried on coming this way, she would have popped out somewhere around here. At least that is my guess, if she did come in this direction. Anna, you're wondering how long it took me before I started getting confident in tracking. Well, it took a while. I think the first year or so that you do it, every time that you see something, and still it happens to me every now and again when you haven't tracked for a little while, and I'm sure it happens to all the guides, I'm sure Byron and Tristan are the same, your eye loses a little bit of practice. So you miss things that before you would have spotted straight away, or that almost like that feeling or that sixth sense that will tell you, okay, this is probably a track and not. So it takes a very long time to get it, but you lose it very quickly. Now, when I did my training, we would go out tracking every morning just to learn the different tracks of the different animals. So to be able to tell which track is which track, that's in general not too hard, but to be able to trail them, especially out in the bush, then that is a skill that I feel like I haven't mastered yet. There are some people that I have worked with in the past that are just unbelievable, and Herbie even, he manages to see little toes in the middle of the grass and in between, and he will show you and tell you exactly, listen, this is where it put the toe, you can see the grass, and my eye is not that sharp yet, so I think that I'm still learning. I feel like I can track a leopard more confidently and lions than I could, obviously, when I first started about 7 years ago. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I will ever be 100% confident. Seems like Tristan has left the drone, is now at the drawing board. So let's see what he's going to draw for us.
I have indeed. I have left the drone. Well, Fergus has left the drone. I had nothing to do with the drone. I just talk about it, but I have no skill whatsoever when it comes to flying that. And quite frankly, that thing scares me because it's worth a lot of money and I don't want to be responsible for such things. But I am at the drawing board, and this is because many of you over the course of the last few months have been asking me to do some updated leopard maps for the area, given what's been going on. And I thought, well, since I'm in the tent, I might as well know there's no better time than to do leopard maps for you. So I've elegantly drawn a very out of proportion map. I do apologize. Please do not quote me on sizes here. This is not exact at all. But essentially what I've drawn is the northern block of the Sabi Sands. So you've got Buffelshoek here, Djuma, Torchwood, then the southern area, and then the western sector, Singita on that side, Ndolozi there, Mala Mala over here, and then Manyeleti and Kruger Park on the top and on the right. So this is the map that I have got and I've drawn out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to populate it with the male leopards first, and I'll show you exactly where all the males currently are spending their time and what the territories are shifting like. And I did do this about a year ago. I think it was maybe about a year ago I did this, and it will be very interesting for those of you that did watch a year ago who have those maps, because I know some of you did copy them out and redo them and do them quite nicely for me. It'll be really interesting to compare the two from last time. I might actually even still have it here. I'll scrounge around through and see if I can find it, but I'm going to redo it and see what we've got and see how things have shifted according to the current status as of today. And as of where I know some of the individuals of the leopards are, so I'll do males and I will do females this afternoon, and we'll try and discuss what that means and what the implications are of all of these leopards moving around. Of course, I'm going to try and do this outside because it is beautiful outside and there's a breeze. It is super hot inside that tent, but on my left-hand side is going to be a bit of a problem because, as you can see, there is a delightful dark array of clouds that are coming straight towards us. So I feel like not only myself, but Byron and Ali are going to be in for an absolute treat this afternoon. If this blows in, I think we might get slightly wet, and I'm quite glad that we're rather at the tent than anywhere else. Cool. Now, let's start with our leopards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from right on the top, and then I'm going to work my way down, and we'll kind of just spread out as we go. And we'll start in different colors. Obviously, I don't have enough colors for all the male leopards, so you guys are going to have to make different colors over the circles that I draw, and just so that you guys can work out what's going on. So we're going to start up in Buffelshoek. At the moment, Buffelshoek is a bit of an unknown. We don't have too many answers as to what's going on here. We know that there are 2 male leopards that get seen here. That is of Djuma and another male known as Mfukazi, which means I think it's the intruder, or I think that's what it is. I'm not 100% sure, but anyway, those 2 leopards get seen in Buffelshoek. Djuma the other day when he had his fight was over here with Hukumuri, so they fought just on the cut line over here. Djuma went north, Hukumuri obviously came south. So Djuma theoretically, as far as we understand it, is in this sort of area and maybe a little bit more. So that's Djuma. That is there. Mfukazi, sorry, my spelling is all over the place. Mfukazi has been seen in these dotted around in this area and then down towards Simambili. So what I'm going to do is, obviously, he won't go outside the gate, but I'm just going to do an overlap of him. I'll change color so that we don't kind of get this all confused. But basically, so this is basically what we're seeing from Mfukazi, who is not really a reliable territorial male. We don't really know where his territory lies. He seems to be in and out. And so those 2 are the ones that are kind of competing for Buffelshoek. Djuma might extend a little bit more towards the Kruger and into Manuleti. I don't really know. Obviously, we don't drive on Buffelshoek, and updates on him are very few and far between. In fact, both of these leopards, they both seem to be quite shy individuals, and so seeing them is quite tough. So I don't know how far the extent is of Djuma's territory, but what we'll do is we'll have a talk as to why I think his territory stops here. And there is a reason for it. There is another 2 individuals that would fit into this framework over here, and so just now we'll get into that and as to why I think Djuma hasn't moved around. What interests me though massively with Djuma is that he is not a small leopard. He is in no way a old leopard. He's still got a lot of fight in him, and I'm very surprised that his assault on Djuma hasn't taken place. I am surprised that we have not seen him moving into this area, and the other day with Hukumuri it seemed as though he backed down, which is pretty weird in my eyes. I would have thought a big male like that certainly would have tried to push in to this area, given that he's been on the fringes for so long. So I wonder what's happening with him and why he's not moving around. It interests me that he is not an individual that is staking a claim here. I wonder if maybe just the sheer brazen attitude of Hukumuri is something that is putting Djuma off, and why he's not moving in, and why Mfukazi maybe is so kind of in and out. So he gets random sightings of him in random places and seems to kind of go about the place without really being picked up too often. So he kind of extends all over the place. It's really interesting stuff. Right, so that's the first 2 males that we've done over there. The third male that we would have, that we would probably start going towards the left, is Hukumuri himself, because, well, Hukumuri is obviously the talk of the town at the moment, and as of today, according to where he sent marked, where we had him this morning, there is going to be a bit of a map here that is going to shock you, and this is exactly where Hukumuri is at the moment. So he is going from this all the way through there, around like this, through here, and around like that. That is all the Hukumuri male at the moment. Hukumuri. Right. Prior to 3-4 weeks ago, this area here, this whole Djuma, Hofmans, Little area, was all Tingana. This is all being taken in the last 3-4 weeks. In fact, that's probably when we started to see him more and more, and he has just pushed himself all the way through. And today, this is where we had him, was over here. So that is how far he has pushed. He walked from here today all the way scent marking and then up into this area, and was continuing in that direction, which is dangerous because obviously we know Tandian Cub, this is their section over here. So that is Hukumuri's territory at the moment, absolutely massive, and we'll get into why he's got maybe such a big territory and what's going on with that when we get back to us just now. But before we get into all of that, let's send you back across to Byron and those snoozy lines.
Well, Tristan, one of the males has actually just woken up and he's moving around a little bit. Beautiful view of him there. I was having a look at him. He was yawning and thought maybe he's going to move a little bit closer to the rest of the pride. It sounds like a lot has changed in the area with leopards, new leopards in the area, which is very exciting. I know Tristan was explaining all of that to you, but a lot of change. So I think some of you are going to have to help me with the new names and that. So I'll ask Tristan for a proper update a little bit later. Hopefully I remember the names of the new leopards. I suppose some things haven't changed. Tristan's back to the drawing board. He seems to be enjoying drawing his territories and pictures of the Sabi sands. This male is still moving. I wonder if he's just going to settle down in the shade over there. There we go. Emma, I'm laughing because my friends seem to be teasing me at the moment, but you're asking about the lions' manes and if they go grey. My mane is starting to go a bit grey, so I don't know about the lions. I haven't seen a male lion with grey hair. I've never got close enough to actually investigate. So I don't think so. I think they're probably not as stressed as we are as guides. Emma, I'm not sure. I don't think so. Blue Cozy, you're asking at what age do the male cubs leave the pride? Oh, sorry, one of the females rolled over a bit too quickly and got a fright. You saw how those heads jumped up. A bit of movement and stretching. Blue Cozy, what happens usually is within a pride, when the males, I suppose when the males get to about between 3 and 5 years old, depending on the males that are already in the area, they may get pushed out at about 4 or 5 years old. And it, like I said, depends on the males in the area. If new males come into the area, they will challenge those young males and possibly try and kill them. That may cause those young males to move out a little bit sooner. But I would say on average it's about 4 or 5 years old from what I've seen in the past. And then often those males may try and meet up with another pride, or possibly try to form a coalition, as we've seen many times in the Sabi Sands area. A lot of males forming coalitions, sticking together to take over territory and mate with females from many different prides, not just one pride. And it can happen that a young male grows up in a pride and doesn't leave. But yeah, I suppose it's difficult to say. It depends on the situation. Other males in the area, the territory, is there going to be a fight for territory? But I would say generally it's about 4 or 5 years old. Now, Tristan was chatting about the leopards, and I just chatted to one of the landowners quickly, and he told me great news actually, that he saw Thandi and her cub this morning. I know you haven't seen them for a while on Safari Live, but apparently they were seen this morning. However, they moved onto Torchwood, but it was great. They were seen, and it looks like they're looking healthy. So I'm sure Ali and Tristan will be happy to hear that. And speaking of Ali, let's find out how her afternoon is going and what her plan is.
Well, I have pretty much been driving like this with my head stuck to the ground, and we haven't been able to see any tracks for Thandi, either coming back or coming onto this way, or even for the Hukumuri. So it's a little bit of a tricky one. I am, however, going to carry on circling around this general area just in case anything pops out, because they might have moved into a lot of different directions if they've decided to go through the block. So I just want to make sure that we cover all the different roads around just in case they are not in the block and they've crossed somewhere, that we can find them once more. Tristan has got all the leopard territory information, so let's go over to him and find out some few interesting facts. Woo.
I don't know if we've got all of it, but we're certainly going to try and piece it all together and see what we can give you and see whether or not we can be fairly accurate about what we're doing at the same time. Now, when we left you, we said that Hukamuri was slap bang, boom, in the middle of all of this and has done some serious movement during the course of the last few weeks, which is obviously quite interesting. So, Peter, you want to know whether or not any leopards are going to stand up against Hukamuri and whether or not anyone's going to stop this marauding male in terms of his advancement and what that means, obviously, to some of our other leopards. So, Hukamuri, at the moment, the only one that could have stepped up to him to stop what is happening currently was Tingana. Now, Tingana, something is not right with him, obviously. He's a shadow of his former self. 2 months ago, I don't think Tingana would have let this male cross this line at all and would have been onto him like a flash. But something is not right with Tingana. What that is, I don't know. He's evidently losing weight quite quickly, and he just doesn't seem to be his same dominant self and is really not pushing. If that means that he met up with Hukamuri, I don't know. But like I say, this morning I asked every single ranger that I could see and speak to this morning as to whether or not anyone has ever seen Hukamuri as far east as this. The answer was a categorical no. So nobody has ever picked up Hukamuri further than Hofmann's and this little western side of Djuma over here, which is where we've been seeing him a lot. We've kind of been seeing him on the west and kind of going up and down. But today he made a massive push. He kind of, like I say, came all in this area. And what we've been seeing is that we've been seeing Tingana hanging around in this section. So I'm going to draw what Tingana's old territory was, and then I'm going to just shade out where he's lost. So Tingana effectively at one point was patrolling this whole area here. So he was going like this all the way through here, around, I mean, obviously Kruger he didn't go into, but in Koro he did go into Torchwood like this, and then around and to the gate and back down. He also actually went a little bit into Mala Mala sometimes as well, but those were infrequent movements. So he did go to Chitwa and Koro fairly regularly, but I'm going to shade out what he's lost over the course of the last 6 months. So what we're seeing from Tingana now is this section over here. This is where we've been seeing him over the last little bit, is pretty much a small little teardrop pattern like that. So all of this is no longer anything to do with Tingana. He has lost all of this terrain to other males lately, which indicates that we have an issue with Tingana. Now, what that means is that we have a lot of big problems with Hukamuri, because all of the females that encompass this territory currently have cubs. Every single one of these females that we know of, Tingana mated with, so Kuchava, Tandi, Shadow, theoretically all those cubs come from him. Because he's lost all of this territory, Hukamuri and the various other males that we'll get into are going to be causing a lot of problems for those cubs, and if he finds them, he will kill them. So even Shadow's cub, while she is a year old or over a year old, she is still in massive danger from Hukamuri, as is Shadow, as is Tandi, because they will try and defend their cubs as best they can, and that's going to lead to a lot of problems. So this is a major issue, and Tingana's health and the way that he's going about things means there's something wrong. A dominant, healthy Tingana, I don't think, would have backed down the way that he backed down and as quickly as he recessed out of this area. So now this sort of indication of Tingana means that we, there's some, like I say, we have to prepare that he is going to eventually be evicted because of the pressure that's not only coming from Hukamuri this way, but I am going to show you that there's going to be males coming this way and this way. Now, Rebecca in FC wants to know where Sindile's territory sits in all of this. Rebecca, the answer to that is I have absolutely no idea, given that we have not seen Sindile in over a year, in fact, longer than that. So who knows where he's ended up. The last time he was seen in the whole of this northern sector was somewhere over there. So that is the Sindile mark over there. And from there, it seemed as though his movement went southwards and down into Sabi. And I reckon that he's somewhere in the Kruger National Park. That's where my guess is. But that was the last visual of Sindile in this section. Right. So we will carry on with this, and we will then add the other males that are in this area, and we'll get more into this discussion of male leopards. But while we do that, let's send you back across to Byron. And I wonder if those lions are going to wake up with the approaching storm.
Well, Tristan, it does not look like it at all. These lions are resting. It is still very warm. There's a bit of cloud cover now, but it is still very humid and quite hot. So they seem to be relaxing, and it doesn't look like there's any sign of them moving anytime soon. I think what I might do is drive around a little bit, check 1 or 2 water holes, just see if there's any activity from other animals, and then come back to these lions a little bit later. Now, Tristan has been going on with the leopard territories and explaining to you the different male territories. And Daniel, you were asking if the lion and leopard territories overlap. They do, Daniel, they do indeed. Now, the lions may have large territories as well as the leopards, especially male leopards. So there's definitely an overlap. Now, you need to remember that because the lions and the leopards fill a different or fit a different niche in nature, they have a different role as predators. The lions are pride animals. They move around and hunt together. Leopards are solitary. Leopards also prefer taking their kills up into trees, usually to keep it out of reach of lions and hyena. So they form or fill a different role within nature. So it's okay for those predators to overlap with their territories. Look, if a lion had to find a leopard, they would kill it. They would probably kill it purely because it's competition. It's another predator. But generally, leopards are very elusive and they're able to get out of the way of lions quite quickly. But yes, the territories definitely overlap, as well as wild dogs. Wild dogs will overlap with lion and leopard territory. Hyena, another predator, obviously, that we see out here a lot. And all those predators, because they are different, they've all got a slightly different role. The territories do overlap. It's unlikely to have different prides overlapping. It may happen in certain areas, maybe a prominent water hole that gets used by different prides, but generally the prides do defend their territories from each other, and they will fight. So prides, various prides, do tend to stick to their own territory, but it may overlap at times slightly. The males, however, for example, these 2 big Birmingham males, they would move between different prides, so move through different pride territories, but those prides would be in their entire territory. So the males have got the large territory, and within that territory there will be a number of different prides, sometimes up to 3 or 4 different prides. Now, I think Tristan's got some more insight to territories for us, and a big male leopard that he'd like to chat to you about is a male leopard I actually saw last year again. I've seen him a few times, not here, but in the south on Londolozi. So let's hear what Tristan has to say about the Anderson male.
Well, we'll get into the Anderson male now, but I just thought while we were sitting here, there was a beautiful crested barbet that landed right here as we were talking. And so I thought, let's have a look at our crested barbet. Why not? It's a beautiful bird and deserves its moment in the spotlight, much like our longhorn beetle earlier. And you can see why it's called a crested barbet, with a nice breeze that is just demonstrating its beautiful crest as it gets blown in the wind. And you can see the colors that it's got on it. It's got beautiful yellows and reds, and then those black wings. And very common bird that we get in this part of the world. See them here quite regularly, and so it's just nice to kind of sometimes get them on camera. Now, Byron was chatting about Anderson male. Anderson male is obviously the one that everybody is thinking about and wondering, why has he not participated in this takeover and what has been going on? I think if you had gone back 8 months ago, we would have all said that either Djuma or Anderson were going to be the ones to push out Tingana and shift into this section that we're just talking about with Hukamuri. Obviously, that hasn't taken place, and why is that? Right, I'll tell you exactly why that is. So Anderson male, his territory, as you can see on this board, now remember, this is not to exact scale, so these territories, while they look like small dots and bigger dots, they're not really. I mean, obviously, the Buffelshoek is a massive area, much bigger than Djuma, and so, you know, these are just relative to the actual sizes. So it would be really nice if somebody overlaid this onto a map, onto a real size spectrum of a map. But what you can see from Anderson is Anderson has all of this, all the way into Singita or Ottawa, Singita down to the Sand River, along the Sand River, all the way along and towards the end of the Mala Mala boundary. This area is absolutely massive. It is huge. So he doesn't need to expand his territory anymore. Also, what's keeping him busy is the amount of females that he's mated with in this section. So he has got currently down here, he's got Moya, or the Nanga female, who's just on the Londolozi boundary. She's just got 2 brand new cubs. He's been mating with Shadulu's mother, which is the Ingrid Dam female, so I believe she's got a new cub. She's got Insele, which is up over here. Tiani hangs around in this section over here. We've got a few other females that are around, and so for him, you know, he doesn't really need to be pushing in this. And we don't know what is also in Singita or further beyond. So at the moment, I think he's been kept so busy by the females here that extending this way just didn't seem like an option at that time. You know, he's got a lot of pressure coming from the male right down in the south called the Flat Rock male, who is also inside of Londolozi. And so his kind of, I think his focus is probably trying to keep that Sand River section northwards up towards us than it is to push west into Djuma. I don't think he's really into that because of the amount of other leopards that are already down there and females that he can mate with. So his time is being spent patrolling a massive territory already. And because, you know, Tingana put up a bit of a brave fight and stood up to him a few times, I think he just decided, well, that's Tingana's area. I'm going to focus here. Now, since Hukumuri has come in, I don't think Anderson has actually ventured this far up in a long time. It's not to say that he won't. What could happen is Shadulu could be in heat. Anderson meets up with Shadulu and Shadulu drags him in here, and then you might find that he starts to notice, hang on a second, there's a gap, and he might start pushing in. So I wouldn't write Anderson off just yet. The thing is, though, is he's got such a huge territory at the moment. There's no need for him to be pushing up this way. At the end of the day, the Sand River is prime real estate, as Byron will attest, and that means that he'd rather be on the Sand River than in an area with no river whatsoever. Like I was saying, that there is another male called the Flat Rock male. So he, for those of you that don't know the Flat Rock male, very similar looking to Hukumuri in a way, also very orange eyes, not quite as kind of puffy and bulky and stocky as what Hukumuri is. He's a bit bigger and he's got a bit more of a kind of longer face, but he's right down south of Anderson, so he's also a possibility that could eventually show up. And in fact, I've actually seen him all the way up here on Simambili as well before. So very kind of interesting on this western side, but that's the reason why we're not seeing Anderson coming in. While I kind of figure out all the other males and populate this map even further, let's send you back across to Byron, who I believe has got a big bull elephant, and well, I'm sure that elephant is petrified at the sight of Byron's biceps.
I don't think so, Tristan. This is actually a very large male. I'm going to keep my voice quite low because you can see he's quite close. He's moved down the road and he's a big bull, so I just want to watch him carefully. He's magnificent. He's not showing us any sign of aggression, but I actually stopped probably a good 60 meters away from him. So he's chosen to walk up towards us. So I don't think he's going to show any sign of aggression, but I am going to just watch him carefully. Oh, I must tell you, I'm so excited. I've missed elephant. I was in the bush not too long ago, but in different areas where we didn't see elephant, and I love seeing them, especially these big males. Oh, he is beautiful. I know a lot of you enjoy seeing these elephants as much as I do. You can actually hear him tearing at this green grass at the moment with his trunk and feeding on it. Isn't he magnificent? Listen to him walking, everyone. I'm just going to keep quiet for a minute, just so you can hear. Isn't that wonderful? You can hear the pads as he's walking through the grass, those big pads of his, and then that trunk breaking and tearing the grass. Look at that wrinkled skin. It's part of the spine, the hump on the spine and the back. mud on his back. He's obviously been mud bathing to stay cool, splashing himself with mud. Amazing texture of the skin. Oh, well, I am now very, very happy. First drive back, lions and a beautiful big bull elephant. I don't see any others around, so I'm assuming this male is by himself. Isn't that a wonderful image of the blue sky and that elephant feeding? Blue Cozzy, you asked about the elephant's tail, the way he's just shaking it or wagging it from side to side. So I don't think it necessarily means anything. With the tail possibly keeping some flies away from the legs, and also I would go as far as saying that it's relaxed. I don't think it's similar to a dog, for example, a household dog that wags its tail when it's happy. Not at all. I think that's got to do with flies. You see how he's brushing it through, up all the way around his back there, probably just chasing flies. However, the tail can be a sign or used to indicate when they are stressed or upset. That tail goes rigid, and they'll make it stand almost straight back, and that is a sign that the elephant will be upset or aggressive. So when it's relaxed like that, it's also another sign that the animal's relaxed. And this male at no point showed any aggression towards us. He's flapping his ears very slowly, just cooling himself down. He's been feeding the whole way. He didn't even lift his head to make himself a bit bigger. This was such a wonderful, wonderful view of him so close to us. I'm going to hang around with him for a little bit longer. I think let's go back to Tristan in the tent and find out how it's going and if he's boiling in there.
Well, Byron, earlier we were boiling, but luckily for us, there has come some cloud and, well, there is no sign of any sun anymore, and there's a bit of a breeze. So we're in a situation where at least it's a fairly more comfortable than it was earlier. Earlier it was like being in a little sweat box and a sauna, and poor Fergus was, I think, having a moment of complete meltdown where he was dripping from head to toe when trying to set up drones and various other things. But anyway, we're all good now, which is good. Right, so I was into this, and there's only two more males that I wanted to address in this whole thing, because really those are the only two that matter, and I know both of you will, well, both of them are leopards that we are all very familiar with. Well, the majority of us anyway. Those of you that are slightly newer might not know these two leopards, but the one is Quarantine, so Mr. Q over here, who has been very quiet of late. I wonder where Mr. Q has been. I think he's been dealing with daddy issues with Nkanyeni, who's got new cubs, so I think Mr. Q is involved in that. And so he's kind of hanging around, like I say, Torchwood into Buffelshoek, and that's why I don't think Djuma pushes this way. I was saying earlier that Djuma, I think, sticks to more to the sort of western side of Buffelshoek, but, you know, Torchwood, I mean, Mr. Quarantine is often going from Torchwood into Buffelshoek and into this area here. So I think that keeps Djuma that way. How far Djuma goes into Manyeleti, none of us know. So his territory could extend out a little bit further than what I've drawn here, but roughly that's kind of what we know about. But Quarantine, he goes through Torchwood, down through Nkoro, has been going through Chitwa, half of Chitwa. So sorry, I went a little bit too far. And like I say, the shapes of these are not quite right. Nkoro and Chitwa and Cheetah Plains are much more long and narrow, but I ran out of space, and so that's why they short sort of blocks. They're actually long rectangles instead. And so he goes through there, and then he goes down to Cheetah Plains. Now, in terms of the dam, Fergus, if you wanted to know where the dam is, there we go. There's Chitwa Dam over there, and then the runway would be over here. So there we go. That's Chitwa Dam and the runway. And so that's Quarantine's area at the moment, and he's kind of moving inside here. Down at the bottom is the other male, which is his brother, and that is Nkuhumas. So Nkuhumas is down here. I think I'm spelling this right. I hope I am. Nkuhumas over there. Right, so Nkuhumas down at the bottom, very successful at the moment. A number of cubs, doing fantastic work on Mala Mala, and is really very, very cool. Now, so these are all the dominant males that we currently have in Djuma. Now, I know a lot of you are asking, but you've forgotten about Hosana and Tamba. No, I have not forgotten about Hosana and Tamba. Don't you worry. They are just unfortunately not dominant males, and so I left them for last. This is what we have a map of dominant individuals at the moment, and ones that we know are producing cubs as well as scent marking. Now, in terms of Hosana and Tamba, I will jump into that after we send you across to Byron and his best friend, the elephant.
Go back a bit, or
yeah.
Now the Ellie is still standing feeding. He's basically wandered straight through that tree. I'm just going to reposition, but stay with us. I'm just going to see if we can see more of his face again while he's feeding on those branches. Hold on a second. Ah, there we go. That's a nice view of him again. Sinak, you were asking, why do elephants have the hump on the back like that, on the spine, or that spine curve? Sinak, I don't know if there's a particular reason for it. I wonder if it's not just the shape of the spine. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's more prominent in the males. I've hit a blank now. I think it is more prominent in the males compared to the females, or is it the other way around? Maybe someone can help me, but I don't think there's a specific reason for it, Sinak, unless I haven't heard of anything. If any of you have heard of a specific reason for that curved spine, but I don't think so. You know, that hump on the back for this big male is obviously a lot of muscle in that to hold his big head and those ears and the tusks. Look at him, he's really beautiful. Vicky, you asked how old is this male. Now, Vicky, judging by the size of him and his tusks and the shape of the head, I don't know, I would guess. I would say this male is probably over 30 years old, I think. I think just over 30 years old. Maybe mid-30s, I would say. He looks like he's in his prime. He looks like he is a fairly large dominant bull. I'm sure he would be following a lot of herds looking for females. He's dropping some fresh dung there. I wonder if there's a lot of marula fruit in that dung at the moment, because there is a lot of marula fruit around. So I'm assuming there would be quite a bit of marula fruit there. I'm not going to go look now, however. But yeah, I would guess maybe mid-30s. Looks healthy, looks big. Mary Ellen, I think that's quite a good question. You were saying how we can read the elephant behavior and their body language, and I was explaining to all of you now what we would look for, you know, when that male is walking towards us. If I had to move, what I would look for. And you asking, would they be able to read our body language? Most definitely. I do believe they are able to not only read our body language, but I think a little bit of our attitude towards him, or our feelings. I do think they are that in tune with sensing the way we feel. I'll tell you why I say that. Hold on a second. I'm just going to reverse a little bit. When we're on foot, especially with elephant, but actually even with the vehicle, I've noticed a lot of the time, and I know a lot of you have seen me in sightings with elephant here before. I'm always very cautious and respectful of them. Actually, I'm just going to keep quiet. I think he's going to follow this path right past us. Just listen to his footsteps. That's fantastic. That is wonderful. He's just moved past us. I think he's now moving on. Mary Ellen, getting back to your question, I do believe they pick up on the way we feel and if we're anxious or if we're a bit nervous of them. You can see he's just behind the aerial there now. There we go. And, when we view them in the vehicle like we've just done, we sat very quietly. I gave him his space. He was 60 meters away from us when we first found him, and he decided to walk up towards us. Never once showed any sign of aggression, but we stayed calm, quiet, walked past, no problem. I think if you start the vehicle, if your body language is anxious, you're making a noise, moving around a lot, they might get a bit anxious and possibly react to that. So they definitely read our body language, and I think I would go as far as saying, I think, a little bit on how we feel. If you feel tense and anxious, but I've noticed it with guests before. Elephants generally seem quite relaxed, and when people start getting anxious on a vehicle and moving around or getting nervous, I see elephants react to that too. I have seen it. So I don't know to what extent we can say how much they read our body language and that, but they definitely do, definitely. And that was a wonderful sighting. Oh, awesome. So good to be back in the bush on Safari Live. Okay, well, I'm going to continue our drive. Let's go and head towards some water holes. Ali is still wandering around and searching for leopards. Let's go find out how it's going.
Well, I feel like more than wandering around searching for leopards, we've actually been sent on a, as VM would say, on a wild leopard chase, because it's way more difficult than a wild goose chase. Every time I speak to someone or get an update from someone, it seems like the leopards could have gone this way and maybe I should go and actually check that other road, but really they didn't leave them here, they left them a little bit there. So it's becoming a bit tricky to try and predict both Tandi's and Hukumuri's movements. Now, I've checked the areas extensively where they were first, or the area where they were left, and I couldn't find anything there. And I know Rexon has also been looking around that area, and he hasn't come up with anything. But then I mysteriously bumped into one of the Buffelshoek landowners who was one of the last people to see both of them, actually, funny enough. And he said that they both seemed to be on a mission and walking quite a lot and heading places. So I would like to go. I came all the way now. We did Battalier. We pretty much covered all of the southern roads. Now I want to try and check to see if perhaps if they carried on moving in the direction that they were, if they actually haven't come onto the Molowati and they are somewhere around here. We know Tandi likes this area, and if she is trying to get away for the Hukumuri male, this is pretty much her territory, and this is where she needs to hide the cub and then leave it. That is a very big if first of all, the Hukumuri is actually after her, and if she's actually come onto this area. Now, a bit of a tricky one, but I am not giving up. I'm going to do one more road, see if I get any tracks, because the only tracks that I ever had were on Chitwa coming all the way in here. I'm going to hold on to dear hope. Hopefully we'll get any tracks. I'm happy with any tracks for either one of them. But while I do that, let's go to Tristan, who seems is looking at the gloomy sky ahead.
We do indeed, and so we've popped the drone up into the air because the storm is starting to come, and it's really amazing because from the ground you don't get to see a true appreciation of what's around us. We are right in the middle of a massive kind of culmination of clouds all over the place. So you can see the bottom layers there and where the cumulonimbus big thunderheads are starting to come. So that's the big storm that's approaching us at the moment. That is coming from our sort of northeast at the moment, and you can see that one has got a serious amount of power inside it. Those are massive clouds, and they are big and they are deep, and they probably hold a fair amount of water. So that's what's heading our way. It really is absolutely beautiful from the top, and from seeing it from that perspective just gives you an idea of kind of what's around us. Now, coming down onto the sort of horizon area, you can see there's the cloud that's blocking out the sun now. That's kind of where the sun is supposed to be and why we don't have too much sun on the landscape at the moment. Another storm closing in from the west. But this is what these male leopards are fighting about. So we've discussed how all these areas, and as far as you are seeing with that drone, all of that section is all the areas that these leopards are kind of looking for and what they are trying to go after and trying to kind of stake their claim to. Isn't it amazing that there's so much kind of movement and so much happening? When you look at a picture of the landscape like this, you look at it and it looks as though it's still and peaceful down there. But as we're seeing with these leopard maps and all the animals for that matter, is that there are lots of things that are going on underneath those trees, and there's a lot of movement and a lot to fight for. And the reason that they're fighting for it is all because of certain factors and certain environmental not issues, but places that they want. So the Mulawati drainage is a big one. The Sand River, like I mentioned earlier, is another. So it's really quite amazing when you kind of look at it from that perspective. But I absolutely love these views from the drone. It's so pretty up there. It's always nice to have a look. Right. Well, we'll get back into our leopard story shortly, because the drone, I don't think, is going to be able to fly too much more with the storm that is approaching. And I believe that Byron, who's not a storm by any stretch of the imagination, in fact, he's one of the most gentle giants, has his very own gentle giant with him.
A gentle giant. Oh, thanks, Tristan. And it looks like the cloud cover's building even more around us, and we found some more elephant. What a wonderful drive. Just to see all these animals again. I can hear some other elephants in the distance breaking branches. This looks like it's just a female and then a youngster that we saw. There we go, there's a young one. Also feeding on the vegetation at the moment. A lot of good food for these animals. Paul, you're asking if elephants get thorns stuck in their foot pads. Most definitely, Paul. I do think, and I've seen elephants occasionally walk up to rocks and scrape their feet on it. And I think that sometimes helps get some of the thorns out. But they do get thorns. But their pads are very thick, so it doesn't really. I've never seen an elephant jump and shake its leg because it stood on a thorn. But I have seen them trying to scratch their feet off if they got something stuck under the pad there. Oh, there's such a nice cool breeze at the moment. You can see the vegetation blowing in the wind, or moving in the wind. And there's Ellie's just enjoying. Look at those wispy clouds. Those are the wispy clouds on that side, but there are some serious clouds building to the other side, to our left. Shopna, you asked if elephants would feel if they were bitten by a mosquito. I don't know. I don't think so. They've got a very thick hide, so I actually wonder if mosquitoes feed on or sit on elephants. I highly doubt it. Just thinking, because their hide is fairly thick. You don't really see ticks or anything on elephant that often. Maybe certain areas that are, I suppose, a bit exposed, but I've never really seen ticks. That's why we don't see oxpeckers on the elephant, and also the elephant throw a lot of sand and mud on themselves to protect their skin. So I don't think mosquitoes would really hassle the elephant very much. I've never heard of mosquitoes biting elephant. Child of the universe, you asked if elephants could pull a thorn out with its trunk. Well, it's possible they are able to pick up little thorns with their trunk. They're incredibly versatile with their trunks, but I don't know if they'd be able to pull a thorn out. I don't think so. I've never seen it, put it that way, so I don't think so. But you never know. Maybe a branch. If there was a branch with a thorn stuck under, they'd be able to pull that branch off and throw it away. I would assume they would do that. Maybe. Yeah. They seem to be moving off now. I think we might do the same and head towards the waterhole. But there's been so much happening. All these elephant and the lions. We started off with warthog and wildebeest. What a great start. I've been driving in other areas around South Africa and also in Botswana recently, a different part of Botswana. And we didn't see too much. It was quite tricky. And I always love coming back to the Sabi sands. It's so active. There's a lot of animal activity around, and there's always so much to see. Really is great being back in this area again. Okay, well, let's head to the water holes. Hopefully there's some animals making their way down to drink. Let's head back to Big Boss Man Tristan, and he's watching some wildebeest.
Oh, the starts again with Byron calling me Big Boss Man. Oh well, it's going to be lots of banter, I'm sure. It's always good to have Byron back because lots of laughs are ahead for all of us, I'm sure. Now, you can see we're about to park the drone down, and we came across our favorite little wildebeest herd that is making their way across quarantine clearings. And so here are some of the females with the sub-adults, and there comes Footloose and company towards the back. So there are 7 of the calves in total. All of them are still around. Can you believe it? Even with all these leopards moving through here, all the lions that we've had recently, it's amazing that the Footloose and co have survived as well as they have. It's always great when you see little ones doing well, and so I'm very happy because it's like a proud father moment. You've got this little wildebeest that is against all odds surviving in a predator-rich environment. What you can also see from this picture is just how barren quarantine was. There are a lot of green shoots there, but just look at the sort of gaps between the grass at the moment. It's not like there's an even lush covering of grass over the landscape. It is really quite sort of patchy at best. And, you know, if we don't receive too much more rain and we get a lot of hot temperatures going forward, that's going to burn off very quickly. And quarantine, once again, will become a really dusty bowl. To kind of try and feed the animals through the winter is going to be very difficult. So, you know, it doesn't look as though we do have too much grass at the moment, but certainly these clouds that are coming in are going to hopefully remedy that, and we're going to have a situation where we're going to get a lot more food growing, and that will sustain many of our animals on these clearings. We know that zebra, wildebeest, buffalo, all of those kind of things rely on clearings like quarantine in order to survive in the Sabi sands. Now, talking about buffalo, I believe Ali, who's had a tough afternoon so far, has finally found some luck and managed to stumble across a couple of the beefy guys, and it's not Byron, it is the buffalo.
Well, I don't have multiple beefy guys, just the one, just this lone bull, who I'm sure when saw all that massive herd coming around and trampling the grass and heading everywhere, decided to take a vacation from all of them and just chill where it's nice and quiet and he doesn't have to worry about so many of them. It's interesting, though, the spot where he's in, because this is exactly where the lions were last left yesterday evening, or the Nkuhumas pride at least. So I think it's almost like he's taking a very big irony and being like, haha, look at where I am now. Now, old bull, it's not strange to find them hanging out by themselves. A lot of the times what happens is exactly that. They get tired of following around the main herd because there's a lot of commotion, a lot of movement, and a lot of buffaloes just in general. So they either stay by themselves or they can form smaller groups and just a few bachelors. And all together. Sorry, I just thought I heard something. Now, he's got a little oxpecker on top, 2 of them actually, and they're both youngsters. If you look at their beak, their colors haven't fully formed yet. So the parents are either on top of the buffalo, somewhere where we cannot see them, or not too far away from here, perhaps foraging on some other animal. Now, you've got like a very crazy look in your eyes, don't you? It's almost like the mad cow. Now, you can see it's a very old, fierce from rubbing against the tree so often. It's normally what we see there. It's probably the tannin from a tree which has a reddish color, and tannin is a substance that the trees produce to pretty much defend themselves. So if you start bothering a tree, especially the animals, if they start feeding on the leaves or damaging the bark, then the tree starts producing out the tannin, which tastes bitter to most animals, and then it tends to prevent them from eating them any longer. You can see all of it there. There's a proud oxpecker. Vicky, you're saying that is a proud hairpiece. That is indeed, and it's full of mud as well. So I'm sure this guy has found or has been in the mud at some point today, as it still looks a little bit fresh. Now enjoying a bout of ruminating. This is why he's moving and closing his mouth like that. And going back to Byron's question earlier, they've got the teeth at the bottom jaw. child of the universe, you're wondering if it doesn't put him in danger just being alone with all these lions. Yes, definitely. He would be a lot more vulnerable than by himself than within a big herd. But at the same time, I think it's a calculated risk. He also doesn't want to be with the rest of the herd. Gets a little bit annoyed, so he stays by himself. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if he eventually met up with some more bulls around the area that feel the same way for a little bit of extra protection. However, this buffalo, just judging by his size and how old he is, I'm sure he's fought a few battles before and he knows how to face lions. So I think it's also, he's got to be more alert if he's on his own rather than if he's with a whole herd, just because, well, lions might surprise him. Now, I'm not sure where that big herd of buffalo went to, the ones that we were seeing for the last few days, and it seems like the lions almost have abandoned looking for them, and now they've decided to come all the way back north. So I wonder if they didn't actually smell them and then got into a panic and ran as fast as they could away from all the lions. Because there was also that Mbiru lioness that was headed their way, so it would be interesting to find out where the lions have gone off to. You seem like you want to carry on sleeping, don't you? Just ruminating a little bit, chewing the cud, swallowing the grass, vomiting the grass. Now, if you look at them this way, they almost look like a very fuzzy little creature, but they've got very coarse hair, so it's not that soft. And as they get older, since if we show a little bit of the middle part of the body, rather, because he's still looking quite well there we go, you see that he's missing quite a lot of hair everywhere. It's normally an indication of an older animal. Now, because he's missing a lot of hair, you can see that he very likely has been in the mud a little bit more to protect his skin from all the sunlight that we've had today. It's been very hot, so you can see it all the way there. Oh, there's just a little bit of scratching going on. Okie dokie, and I can almost see the red beak of one of the adult oxpeckers. So I think the adults are also here. They're just on the other side. Sinak, you're wondering where do oxpeckers nest? Well, I will tell you now, but first I want to tell you a funny story because I find it very funny indeed. For a very long time, people actually thought that oxpeckers nest inside of the ears of some of the bigger animals, and especially of the rhino, and that they would come inside of the ear of the rhino and then would have their eggs and their chicks in there. Now, they obviously do not nest in there, but because they are known to go inside and spend quite some time inside of the ear plucking the ticks, because the skin tends to be a little bit thinner in there, then for a very long time it was widely believed that that's why rhinos and oxpeckers got along. But no, they normally just nest in trees, wherever there's a hole with the tree. Old dead trees that have got little cavities and so on, they all nest there. Now, they will have a structure of normally an alpha pair and a bunch of helpers that help raise the next generation, and they all stay inside together of the hole of a tree for warmth. Go back in there to roost during the night and then come out during the day to start looking for more animals that might have a few ticks on them that need a little bit of taking care of. Now, I'm pretty sure they are on the other side of the buffalo. Now, he's also doing something funny with his tail. What is going on? Did you just twist it and did he just get twisted in there? Yeah. He's got a mun, says Rebecca Nafsi. New hairstyle. Well, yes, because unfortunately his head for his man bun is taken by his horns. Oh, okay. Maybe, he's just too cool for the rest of the buffalo. He's got a different hairstyle. Oh no, now you want to be like the rest. That was so anticlimactic. We're going to head back to Tristan for the days of our lives of our leopard. So maybe he will have some insight as to where I can find Tandy, because I am having no luck this afternoon.
Well, Ali, I'm pretty sure Tandy is having a little vacation in Torchwood for a while all of this plays out, and it certainly is days of our lives. Now, one thing that's nice about being in the tent is that you get to see the feeds, and I just saw that buffalo recently with its tail on top of its back, and it reminded me of Brent Leo Smith and his hair bun that he sometimes has on his head. Don't tell him I said that because he'll be very upset with me. But it did look a little bit like Brent's little bun that he's got. So anyway, back to leopards. Let's get into more serious things. The last time we spoke about this, we were talking about Hosana and Tamba and the fact that I hadn't put them on. So there is a reason why they're not here. Like I said, they're not territorial individuals, but I will show you where Hosana and Tingana are currently hanging out. Tamba are currently hanging out and why they're in the areas that they are. So because of Tingana's decreased territory that we see here, we're having a situation where Hosana is pretty much hanging out in that area like that. That is all just where H is. Hosana, he's doing a little loop around. He used to come all the way up into kind of central Djuma, but it's been a long time since we've seen him at Treehouse. He does every now and then kind of come here, but his core area is Twin Dams, Little Gari, where the Treehouse Dam is somewhere over here, and then there is also, Chitwa Dam. So that's his kind of area that he's hanging around. Tamba's a little bit different. Tamba, he doesn't really have an area where he's hanging about like Hosana. Tamba, to give you an idea of where he's being seen, he was seen here the other day. He's been seen up here. He gets seen on Djuma, as we know, around quarantine lately, and he's been seen all the way down here. So this is where Tamba moves. As he goes up like this, he comes past Chitwa, he comes up into Torchwood, he then crosses into Djuma, up into Manyeleti, then he came down, then he went like this, all the way along Simbambili, to Elephant Plains, in which case he came along back like this, straight across, made a kill over here during the National Geographic TV shows, and then from there nobody knew where he was, and then all of a sudden, boom, he was back at Djuma over here, and this is where he's kind of been localized. So his actual area in the last sort of week has been there. So that's where T is at the moment. But you can see he's got far-ranging movements, and that's going to just expand and expand and expand until he finds himself a territory. And it's exactly what happened with Sindile. So I was saying Sindile was last seen there, but we know from when he had the collar on that Sindile's movement started to get bigger and bigger, and his circle got wider and wider and wider, and eventually he just distributed out and found himself a territory. And so that is exactly what you're seeing from Tamba at the moment. He's trying to find himself a spot in this chaos that we see here. If you think about the size of this area, now to give you an idea, if you look on the mountain cam in the Mara, you're pretty much watching from that mountain cam, you are watching this whole section. All of these leopards would fit pretty much in what that camera sees. That's just to give you an idea of how much space we're dealing with. This whole section here is about 8,000 hectares or 16,000 acres, and that's how many male leopards we've got that we know of. Now, I say that we know of because there was another random male leopard that was seen recently. Nobody knows who he is. I've asked for the guys to try and send me some pictures to see if we can get a facial shot. There was one photo of him from behind from the Nkoro guys, and they believed it was Nkuhumas. Since the kind of photo came out, lots of spot patterns have been done, and it doesn't seem like it is Nkuhumas, which means that there was a random male that was sighted over here. So that's random male. It's upside down, I do apologize, but that's where a random male was seen. And you can only think, if it's going to be like Hukumuri, who was a random male to start and seen in funny places, that he's going to end up being over there. Who knows what he's going to do? Maybe he's going to sandwich his way in this gap between Nkuhumas, quarantine, and Hukumuri as it stands. Now, there is one other leopard that everybody has been asking about and wondering what's going on, and that is Mvula. Now, Mvula, unfortunately, we don't know where he is. We don't know what's happened to him, but my gut feel is that he's no longer with us. And I say that with a heavy heart, and the reason why I say that is because the condition that he was in when he was last seen is atrocious. He was not looking good at all. He was literally just a skeleton with some skin on him, and the fact of where he was and that he hasn't been seen since then is not a good indication. Mvulo is a relaxed enough leopard that in the last month he should have been seen somewhere. His last kind of time he was seen was when I was just before I went on leave last, and he was seen down here. So that was Mvula's last sighting in that area, and that means that he was the last position he was seen, and that was quite some time ago, and he hasn't really been seen again in very poor condition. So the chances of him still being alive, I don't think is very good. It's a sad, sad thing to think about, because that's a real old friend that I've had many, many amazing sightings with. So kind of makes me a bit sad to think about that, but you never know. Maybe somehow he's managed to avoid it and he's come through it, but I doubt it, given that we haven't seen him. Good. So that wraps the male leopards up, and I say good not because of Mvula, but because we've gotten through all of our males. So what we'll do is we'll ditch the male sheet, and then we will get the females out, and at the end I'll put them next to each other. And like I say, if you guys want to just compare them to the last time I did this, that would be nice. While we try and draw another map and try and get the females up and all of that, let's send you back across, I think, to Byron. I'm not sure. Either you're going to get a ponytail or you're going to get short, curly, black hair. I'm not sure which one, but either one, I'm sure we'll laugh and have a good time with you, all of you.